This is the panel discussion for science fiction. We are covering Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, and analyzing the new audiences from the audiences today, from the audiences that were back in the 60s and 70s when these shows started up, and how they compare to today, if we are catering to a new audience and how they've changed. And we have Rosemary Johns here. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Rosemary, and then Connie, and what book you have for science fiction.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Johns. I'm an author. I write both fantasy and science fiction. My book series at the moment is Rebel Vampires, and it's a kind of crossover between fantasy and science fiction, because I think there is quite a crossover between that. And the vampires that I have in my series really blur the line between the two.
And Connie?
Hi, I write science fiction, and I tend to like space stations, so I have a whole series on what I call Gulliver Station. And then I started a series on like a YA dystopia. And then I just started a new book, my Zoe O'Hale series, where I talk about a young woman who was orphaned because of the society's decision not to support people that are undesirable. So your anarchists, your drug users, your do-gooders, all those kind of people. Excuse me. I've been reading science fiction since I was 13, so I just am really interested in how you can use science fiction to look at society, current society, and see and extrapolate out and see where that will take you.
No, that's fascinating. I just wrote my first and possibly my only science fiction, Zombies from Space and Vampires. I just, yeah, it is as bad as it sounds. Bruce Campbell did a lot to inspire this book. It is about aliens who look a lot like what we would call zombies, an alien race called Weeches, who come and invade Earth, and they basically prey and feed off of humans, which really upsets the vampire races who do exist and have been living in secret this entire centuries and thousands of years. They come out of hiding to protect their own food source, and there's basically a war battle that breaks out between the Weeches and the vampires over who gets to eat the humans. My story focuses on the humans who basically say screw that and try and do what they can for survival. I have absolutely no interest in science fiction. I haven't read any science fiction, but I found out that I've been a science fiction fan all along with my addiction to Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who. I was a Whovian years before I realized I would even be one. I was a Trekkie years before I even started watching the show, and that was something I easily gloated about, was I will love the show. I just don't know where to start. I found out where to start, and sure enough, I am a Trekkie. And of course, I just watched all of Doctor Who. I spent a year, 2016 to 2017, doing nothing but watching all 53 years of Doctor Who. So I am a Whovian. So that is my contribution to science fiction, is my really bad B book and my passion for sci-fi.
See, I've loved science fiction since I was a very small child, because I'm from very near Oxford, and we have a really long tradition of both fantasy and science fiction. So my parents had just piles of books of fantasy and sci-fi books, and I just basically found them and started reading them.
It was always around. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. And that was just it. And then they took me to the library, and I refused to go into the children's section. And I went into the adult section, and that was it. And I took it to school. I remember once taking a sci-fi book to school, And the teachers actually phoned my parents, worried because I was reading these adult sci-fi books. and my parents said that, no, sorry, she's allowed to. The end.
Yeah,
that was it for me in sci-fi.
This is exactly what I'm saying. Is I know nothing about science fiction. I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I read Catalyst by Alan Dean Foster. I believe it was Alan Dean Foster. And I love, and I want to say Tad Williams now, I'm not sure which. So I actually do read it. Well, yeah, I guess. And what am I saying? I read Douglas Adams.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, his Doctor Who book. I can't think of the name of it. It was his Tom Baker finale series. I just cannot remember it right now. So I have a background of it. And I remember going over to my grandparents' house and my uncle was there watching Star Trek, which I loved. And I sat through more than one episode of Lost in Space. And I remember my huge, and it was very much in movie form than it was in book form. And I really don't know how it appeals on the book side of things. I am curious what your opinions are on that, how science fiction differs from movie to book. But my one movie that I watched, like all I ever watched, was Empire Strikes Back. Never New Hope. It was very unusual for us to get New Hope. And when I finally got it, it was a treat to watch the garbage sing. It was a real treat. It's like, ooh, is this the one with the garbage? So I remember just constant replay, Empire Strikes Back. That was what I grew up with. So it's interesting because when I found out that I do watch sci-fi, that I do like it, it was a very long emotional battle of, no, I refuse to be that person. And I am. We call that nerd in denial. But
the weird thing is, in England, if you call somebody a nerd, it's a straight out insult.
Really?
Straight out insult.
See, it used to be here. A geek is an insult here. A geek in the States is an insult.
But you see, in England, geek isn't an insult. See, it's actually quite cool to be a geek now. So, like, you can get away with being called a geek. But if you call someone a nerd.
We have and you cannot dweeb. Dweeb is not cool. Dweeb would not be more offensive. I'm glad we're in agreement over that.
No, we're in agreement on that one culturally.
Yeah. No, we call that nerd rage and nerd pride. And I guess here's a great example of the two audiences changing. Doctor Who, I guess, now there's Whovian. We are Whovians. But there's a thing out now called dweebs, queeves, doovs. It's like dweeb or nerd mixed with the word Whovian. And this is, there's like a lot of Whovian rage happening because this new generation is coming out. And the new generation are children, teens, who are watching from 2005 only and on. And I have a huge problem with those people. I'm like, there is a whole history of Doctor Who there, and you are missing out when you start with 2005. So when people go, oh, I'm a Whovian, I love Christopher Eccleston. Yeah, what'd you think of Tom Baker? Who? Get out. So Connie, I am curious, books, authors, shows, which ones, do you have any favorites?
I started by a friend of mine was on a paper drive when I was 13. And she was not a reader, but one of the people where she stopped to pick up newspapers for the paper drive. Do people still do paper drives anymore? I don't know. But the guy gave her a whole box of sci-fi books. So my introduction to sci-fi was 6 solid weeks. I read every book in the box, and it was Hyland, and it was Asimov, and it was Clarke, and all the classic stuff, and I was hooked. I just did a full immersion in sci-fi until school started. I just had a great summer that summer. And then I checked out the library and I found out, oh, Robert Hyland has all these other books, and Clarke has all these other books, and I was just hooked right from the start. I don't know what I read before I was 13, but after I was 13, it was sci-fi.
Yeah. So you're a long-time fan. You know.
Long-time fan. Yeah. So the books I got were probably written in the 50s. Their original work was written in the 50s, and I got the box it was the mid 60s.
Yeah.
So So it was a little old then, but even now I can pick up one of those books and I'm just fully immersed again and I don't like to reread because there's so many other books out there. But yeah, the current sci-fi on TV is just fantastic.
Yeah. Oh
What is the
yeah.
name? Where they've got the Earth and Mars and the Belters in a big fight.
Mhm.
God, the name escapes me now, but the science in that, and I'm looking at the backgrounds half the time and not paying any attention to what they're saying because I'm just getting all these ideas for the tech for my stories. The tech is just fantastic.
Yeah, no, that the tech is, and I don't, to me, it's never about the tech. The tech, and there's like a whole lot of science fiction people out there going, and yeah, it's not about the tech for me. It's cool. But for me, it's about, and this is going to sound weird, it's the shimmer and glimmer of the metal. It's really weird. There is this one particular episode of Doctor Who, David Tennant, one of my favorite episodes, when they go to the Crystal Waterfalls and they are in I think it's a 12-hour journey in a bus that is closed off from the outside, the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is unbreathable, unlivable. They can't even look at it. And as they're carting across this plateau, they are stopped and this alien creature comes in. And it's the imagery. You actually don't see anything in the episode. The philosophy of this particular episode is outstanding, and that's a whole nother topic. But it's the imagery that they paint. These sapphire waterfalls, where the sapphires come down, they strike the bottom of the water, and then they shatter into gems. And I don't know, would you call that fantasy? It's that image.
It's very close though, isn't it? Which again is my
gorgeous.
thing about fantasy and sci-fi blurring.
It is so gorgeous, the imagery, and you never actually see the waterfalls. You just hear about them, and the imagery that it paints through this whole episode, of the philosophy aside, and the Akatan, I can't remember the Akatan, the Rings of Akatan. That one again, the imagery, the visual, and I know Ghost in the Shell is now in theaters in the States. And I'm not sure if either of you know what Ghost in the Shell is.
I haven't heard of it.
Ghost in the Shell is an anime. It is, and it's funny because my husband owns the animes. I'm pouring coffee. That's not me being inappropriate. My husband owns the anime, so we watched Ghost in the Shell. It is Japanese science fiction. There really is, and it is not for children. Despite the animation, this is not, and this is hardcore science fiction. It is about a cyborg. I can't really tell you much about it because I haven't finished the anime yet, but it is about a cyborg created to conduct human tasks. And the tech is you just glance at it and it goes, whoa, that's sci-fi. We are talking the planets. There is that hard, gorgeous metal sheen look to it, high tech. When I found out they did a movie on it and have it here in the States, it blew my mind. Because America is very, very closed-minded when it comes to anime. So to see a full-length feature film in the theaters here is a big deal. But if you are a science fiction lover, Ghost in the Shell is absolutely up your alley.
I'll have to keep my eyes open for that.
It is breathtaking. It is like Final Fantasy, but that's their version of science fantasy. Ghost in the Shell is their edition of hard science fiction. So, and it's the anime really does a great job. And I'm not talking Ghost in the Shell. I'm just talking in general because Japan has their own style of science fiction. And it's almost, you have to be hardcore nerd into anime to see it. And they really, and that's where I get a lot of my science fiction exposure now, in addition to the Star Trek, Star Wars, and Doctor Who happening. And it's really interesting to see the contrast, how Japan's handling it and how we're handling it here on the West Side. So absolutely that's my recommendation. I'm going to shut up now, the anime.